I didn't want to support you. That's what I said to my son when he offered to help me. I remember the look on his face. Not anger, not disappointment. Just silence. At 72 years old, silence had become my closest companion. I lived with it. I slept beside it. And most days, I hid inside it. My name is Eleanor. Most people call me Ellie. I am a grandmother of 4. A widow. And a woman who learned very early in life that asking for help often comes with a price. So I stopped asking. I used to wake up before the sun. Even after I no longer had a job to go to. Old habits don't leave easily. I would sit by the small window in my apartment, holding a cup of coffee that went cold far too often. From there, I could see the street slowly wake up. Cars passing. People going somewhere important. I used to be one of them. I worked most of my life. Not the kind of work people talk about proudly. The quiet kind. I cleaned houses that were bigger than my entire apartment. I worked in diners where customers never learned my name. I watched other people's children grow up while my own learned to be strong without me. When my husband died 15 years ago, the world didn't slow down for me. The bills didn't wait. The rent didn't care. So I kept moving. That's what strong women do. They keep moving. The trouble didn't come all at once. It never does. First, the hotel cut my hours. Then the diner closed. Then my knees stopped cooperating the way they used to. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I still had time. What I didn't tell anyone was that my savings were disappearing faster than I expected. Or that sometimes I stood in the grocery store, staring at prices, deciding which meals I could afford to skip. Hunger is easier than shame. At least hunger is quiet. My son, Daniel, called often. How are you doing, Mom? Fine, I said. Do you need anything? No, I said. I raised him to stand on his own. I wasn't about to lean on him now that he had his own family. Daniel has 2 children. A wife. A life that already asks too much of him. I didn't want to be another weight on his shoulders. At family dinners, I smiled more than I spoke. I pushed food around my plate and said I had eaten earlier. I laughed at stories I had already heard. Karen, my daughter-in-law, watched me closely. She meant well. But concern has a way of feeling like judgment when you're already fragile. One evening, as I stood in the hallway putting on my coat, I heard her whisper. She's getting thinner. Daniel replied softly, she says she's fine. Karen sighed. I don't think she is. I pretended not to hear. Pretending had become something I was very good at. The letter came on a Tuesday. Plain envelope. No return address. I knew what it was before I opened it. Final notice. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after reading it. The apartment felt smaller. Quieter. This place wasn't much, but it was mine. Every scratch on the wall, every loose floorboard, carried years of my life. Losing it felt like erasing myself. That night, I cried into my pillow like a child who didn't want to be heard. I cried for my husband. For the years I gave away so easily. For a world that seemed to have no space left for women like me. The next morning, my refrigerator stopped humming. I stood there in my robe, staring at spoiled milk and wilted vegetables, doing math in my head. Rent or electricity? Heat or food? I chose rent. Again. A few days later, Daniel showed up unannounced. He stood in my kitchen, taking in the silence, the emptiness. Mom, he said gently, why is your fridge empty? I opened my mouth. Closed it. I'm fine, I said. He didn't argue. That scared me more than if he had. He just looked at me, the way he did when he was a little boy trying to understand something unfair. You don't have to do everything alone, he said. I turned away. I didn't raise you to carry me. There it was. The wall I had built brick by brick. He nodded slowly. I know, he said. But what I didn't know was that he had already made a decision of his own. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I told myself I would find work. Any work. The next day, I went to the library and printed resumes. My hands shook as I typed my age into online applications I knew would quietly reject me. No one called. Days passed. Then weeks. I stopped checking my phone. One afternoon, Daniel called again. Mom, he said, can you get dressed tomorrow? Why? I asked. We're going somewhere. I almost said no. Almost. Something in his voice stopped me. All right, I said. But as I hung up, fear settled in my chest. I didn't know where he was taking me, and I didn't know if I was ready for whatever came next. All I knew was this. I didn't want to be saved. I didn't want charity. I didn't want to lose myself. And I had no idea that the next step my son was about to take would force me to face everything I had been running from, the work I never asked for. Daniel didn't tell me where we were going. He just said, "Trust me, Mom." Trust was not something that came easily anymore. Life had taught me that promises often sound kind before they become heavy. I wore my best coat, the one I saved for church and funerals. It still smelled faintly of lavender from years ago. As we drove, I watched the city pass by. Places I used to clean. Streets I walked when my legs were stronger. "Is this an interview?" I asked. Daniel smiled. "Something like that?" That answer made my stomach tighten. We stopped in front of a small brick building with a faded sign. Community Center. I almost asked him to turn around. I had no degree, no title, just years of quiet work no one ever wrote down. Inside, the air felt warm, not just temperature. People laughed. Children ran past holding papers and crayons. A woman with silver hair approached us. "You must be Eleanor," she said, smiling. Her smile wasn't rushed. It wasn't polite. It was real. "We've been waiting for you." I looked at Daniel, confused. "What is this?" I whispered. He took a breath. "Mom, I told them about you." He told them about my years working with families. About my patience. About how I raised him alone after his father died. "I didn't exaggerate," he said quickly. "I just told the truth." No one had ever spoken about my life like it mattered. The woman introduced herself as Margaret, the director. "We need someone like you," she said. "Someone who listens." She walked me through the building. A room where seniors gathered to talk. A corner where kids waited for homework help. A kitchen where meals were prepared slowly, with care. "This isn't fast work," Margaret said. "It's human work." Human work. I hadn't heard those words in a long time. I wanted to say no. Pride rose up again, sharp and familiar. "I didn't ask for this," I said quietly. Margaret nodded. "I know." Daniel's eyes searched my face. "I didn't do this to embarrass you," he said. "I did it because I couldn't watch you fade." That word hurt. Fade. But something else hurt more. The truth in it. I agreed to try. Just a few days a week. That's what I told myself. The first day, I sat with an elderly man named Frank. He talked about his late wife for nearly an hour. No one interrupted him. No one rushed him. When he finished, he smiled like he had been holding something heavy for years. "Thank you," he said. "No one listens anymore." I went home that day with a strange feeling in my chest. Purpose. The paycheck came 2 weeks later. It wasn't large. But when I held it, my hands trembled. Not from fear. From relief. I paid my rent. Bought groceries without counting every dollar. Turned the heat back on. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. Not everyone was happy. Karen noticed immediately. "You're working?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes," I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "How long can you really do this?" she asked. "You're not young." The words weren't cruel, but they landed heavily. "I'm capable," I replied. She nodded, unconvinced. Daniel stayed quiet. I appreciated that. Weeks passed. I learned names, stories, habits. The kids waited for me after school. The seniors saved seats for me. People asked my opinion. That surprised me. For years, I had been invisible. Now, people noticed when I wasn't there. Slowly, something shifted. I stopped apologizing for taking space. One afternoon, Margaret asked me to stay late. She closed her office door. "We want you to lead a small program," she said. I laughed before I could stop myself. "Me?" She smiled. "You have a way of making people feel safe. That's not something you can teach." I went home that evening shaken. Leadership was not something I ever imagined for myself. I had spent my life following instructions, not giving them. At dinner that weekend, Karen brought it up again. "This feels temporary," she said. "What's the plan if this doesn't work out?" I put my fork down. For once, I didn't rush to smooth things over. "I have a plan," I said calmly. She looked surprised. Daniel looked proud. That night, I sat by my window again. Same chair, same street. But everything felt different. I wasn't hiding anymore. And I could feel something building. Not conflict, not fear. Truth. And I knew, sooner or later, we would all have to face it. The truth I finally spoke. The conversation didn't start as a confrontation. It never does. It started as a normal family dinner. Plates clinking. Children talking over each other. Small smiles hiding bigger thoughts. But I felt it. That tightness in the air. Karen kept glancing at me, like she was measuring something she didn't fully understand. Finally, she spoke. I just want to be realistic, she said carefully. This job, it's nice, but it can't last forever. The room went quiet. I looked down at my hands. Old hands. Hands that had worked most of their life without applause. For a moment, the old Eleanor almost stayed silent. Almost. Then I looked up. I didn't need saving, I said calmly. I needed opportunity. No one spoke. I continued, my voice steady but low. For years, I told myself staying quiet was strength. That not asking was dignity. But all it really did was make me disappear. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I wasn't weak, I said. I was unseen. Karen swallowed. I didn't realize she started. I know, I said gently. That's the problem. No one realizes when women like me are struggling. We get very good at hiding it. The words surprised even me. They had been sitting inside my chest for years, waiting. I raised my son alone after his father died, I continued. I worked jobs no one remembers. I skipped meals so others wouldn't have to. I looked directly at Karen. I didn't do all that just to fade quietly at the end. The room was still. Daniel reached for my hand. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. I should have pushed sooner. I squeezed his fingers. No, I said. You did exactly what I needed. Even when I didn't want it. A week later, the community center hosted an open meeting. Parents, volunteers, local leaders. Margaret asked me to speak. My heart raced. I had never spoken in front of a crowd before. I stood at the front of the room, hands shaking. My name is Eleanor, I began. I'm 72 years old. People smiled. I used to believe my best years were behind me, I said. That once you reach a certain age, you're expected to step aside. I paused. But I was wrong. I talked about listening. About patience. About experience that doesn't come from books. When I finished, the room applauded. Not loudly. Respectfully. The program grew. We helped seniors find part-time work. We matched grandparents with families who needed care and guidance. We created space for stories that had never been heard. I wasn't just participating anymore. I was leading. Karen started volunteering on weekends. One afternoon, she pulled me aside. I misjudged you, she said quietly. I'm sorry. I smiled. Most people do, I replied. I used to do it too. Months passed. My life settled into something steady. Not perfect, but solid. One evening, Daniel and I sat together on my couch. I was scared I'd offend you, he admitted. Finding you that job. I laughed softly. You did, I said. Then you reminded me who I was. He looked at me, confused. You didn't rescue me, I continued. You respected me enough to believe I still mattered. That night, I returned to my window. Same street. Same view. But I was no longer watching life pass me by. I was part of it again. I didn't want to support you. That's what I told my son. But the truth is, support doesn't weaken you. It reveals you. Age doesn't erase purpose. Silence doesn't mean emptiness. And sometimes, the greatest gift a child can give a parent is not money, not shelter, but the chance to stand tall again. I thought dignity meant standing alone. But life taught me something deeper. Real dignity is knowing you still matter, even when someone reaches out to help. And as long as we are breathing, our story is never over.